How you doing, guys? This is Andrew from Rival Productions, and today we're going to be doing a tutorial on warp cutting. If you don't know what that is, basically it is cutting out all of the ums and likes out of a video. It's really helpful when you're cutting out these things for like a 1-minute promo or something short form that you don't have time, you don't have enough time there to waste on people stuttering or things like that. It's also helpful if you're just trying to look professional. Usually people might just use a cross dissolve, and it can work, it'll do, but it's definitely not going to be as clean of a cut, or it's not going to look as professional as a warp cut. So for this, we're going to just use Adobe Premiere and After Effects, both stock plugins, nothing extra. So yeah, there we go. So let's take a look at this sample clip. I hate this guy. Not a professional, but whatever. We'll use him, I guess. So let's look at this clip, and you can see the long pause with an in it. Once I went to college and I met some people, I realized that we could be doing this ourselves, and I wouldn't have to continue. You see that? That big old pause? All right, so let's look at this and see what it would look like if we just did a plain cross dissolve. Okay, so it's around here. Even look at the audio, maybe. Here we go. Yeah, it's very small, but let's take a look at this. Ready? That's a good like couple of seconds right there. So let's cut it right before I say and then cut it right afterwards. So right after, I wouldn't have to. So right there, and you're going to pay attention, look at the mouth and see where that's left. That's part of this. I'll explain a little bit more. So we're going to cut right here at the end of it. We're going to hit Shift and this. You don't necessarily have to because the audio and video is linked. If they're not linked, hitting Shift and cutting will cut everything in line. It's not just going to hit the one part of that video. So let's get the beginning of it. And look at the mouth again. Amazing. But here's why I'm saying look at the mouth. So I got rid of the We're going to go back, delete that section. And I'm just hitting the delete key on the keyboard rather than dragging the clip over. Saves a little bit more time. So you see that little bit of a jump there. So rather than keeping that jump, we're going to blend the frames together. So we're going to look at, what are we doing? Cross dissolve and see how that would look. So that's, what, like a second cross dissolve? That's going to look terrible. That's not terrible. You could probably get away with that, but still not looking nice. So we're going to even see what would this look like at 4 frames. And make sure you have it centered at the cut. See, that's not terrible either. You can get away with it, but see, look. See, you could probably get away with it, but even let's make that shorter. Let's say 2 frames. You can get away with it, but it's not pretty. So let's take that out of the equation. And now we're going to zoom all the way in to single frames each. Now what you're going to want to do, depending on how your audio is set up, if you have separate, like dual recording audio, you're going to want to lock your audio track. And then this way, when you're cutting, all you're cutting are the frames necessary. And what we're going to end up doing is actually adding frames in between these two. So we'll cut out the last frame and then the first frame of what was good. And how this will work is, I just had to check something, sorry. So what we're going to end up doing is adding extra frames in here. So what we want to do is save what we're doing and then also select the 2 frames. Right click, hit replace with After Effects composition. If you don't know anything about After Effects, it will at least, this will, you don't need to know a whole lot. So we're going to save this somewhere. Let's say rival content, tutorials, warp cuts. And this is the warp cut tut. Warp cut tut. I like it. All right. Save that. You can save however you want. So basically what we're going to do, this is relatively close to what Premiere looks like. There's definitely different animals, different things involved here. What we're going to do is take these two files. The name is the same because the exact same clip, but they broke it down to 2 durations. So this is a 1 frame duration, and this is another 1 frame duration. So we're going to click these, right click, pre-compose. And what that's going to do, we're going to move all the attributes into the new composition. And we're going to call this composition nested. You don't need to call it, you call it whatever you want, just make sure you know where it is. And then we're going to change the composition's length. And what I like to do is start out with a good 10 frames. I'm never going to really, it's not going to stay 10 frames long, but as long as I start with it, I can always cut it down. So now this original composition is 10 frames long, but the footage is only 2 frames, how it is right now. So what we're going to do is right click and then go up to time. We're going to hit enable time remapping. So this is just allowing it to do extra stuff. So here's what I want to do. I want to go over to effects and presets, and we're going to type in time warp, as in one word, time warp. And we're going to apply this to that pre-composed composition. And we're going to extend the length of this, and that's why we enabled the timer mapping so we can play around with it and it's not locked down. And by default, it's set to half the speed. So regularly it's 2 frames. Now we should be able to get around 4 frames. I usually leave everything at its defaults, depending on how clean I need it to be. And we're going to just look and see what it did. So around 4 frames is where we should have at 50%. So we go 1 frame, 2 frame. That's okay. So 3 frames is when it starts getting really messed up, or after the 3rd frame. So this is the 4th frame. See, 1 frame, 2 frame, 3 frame, 4 frames. So at that 4th frame starts getting messed up. But all we did was add that transition. This is a new frame that was made up from the time warp plugin. But what I usually like is about 20% of the speed. So if you look at this now, it'll go and transition into that last frame, and then it starts getting distorted. So what we're going to do is, I like this. I like most of this, how it transforms a lot smoother. So we're going to look at this. I'm going to turn off my transparency background because that's kind of getting confusing. So we're going to look up to about here. This is where it gets messed up. If I want to go back and forth single frames on the keyboard, I'm going to hit Control on a PC, and we're going to go just back a frame. I'm going to say that is the last frame I want. So I'm going to hit N, and that ends the that marks the end of my composition, or what I want. So see this bar up here changed? So now we're going to right click it and say trim comp to work area. And what that does is just takes my 10 frames that I originally set it to and changes it out to be 5 frames. Or 6 frames, sorry. So play it back full motion, and it goes on a loop. But you can see it's a way smoother transition now. So now we want to save this, Control S, and then go back into After Effects. And then what we'll see is that this turned into a pink video. That's just saying that it's dynamically linked to another software. So what we're going to do is unlock the audio, and now skirt this over a little bit. And see how this has changed over to be a longer clip. So I'm going to go back, make it as long as possible, and then delete this. And then what we'll notice is that now it's a smoother transition. There we go. Do you notice that? We're going to start from the beginning, watch it back. Now what you will notice is that now the audio is missing. We don't have audio to cover that up. That's why it's super important when you're recording that you record some dead air. And then in that process you can fill it in. So let's look at this. Let's even play with that a little bit. Copy this, move it over. We'll undo that, and then I'm going to paste it here. So now you remember that audio that was missing. I'm going to bring this back. So that helps cover up that space audio-wise. So now you don't hear the empty gap. You hear the room tone. You can hear what the room would look like or sound like if nobody was in there. So that is how you would do a traditional warp cut. Yeah, let's look at it, the original version and this. You all ready for this? Okay, so we'll bring that back up. So let's compare the two. This is that original cut that we did, or before we cut it.
Once I went to college and I met some people, I realized that we could be doing this ourselves and I wouldn't have to continue spending more.
So now this is with that warp cut.
Once I went to college and I met some people, I realized that we could be doing this ourselves and I wouldn't have to continue spending more money on school.
So that cuts out a lot of that time. And it's a way smoother transition than just doing it cross dissolve. So, I hope you liked that tutorial. My name's Andrew from Rival Productions, and stay tuned.